Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to the finale of our Anchorage Ice Tigers Draft to Glory franchise mode. So, today's the final episode, which is crazy because we've been running this series since the beginning of NHL 23. We're already up here now, August 12th. I'm recording this. You guys are seeing this on August 14th, but we have finally reached the end of one of my favorite series of all time, I'd say, probably, because the ending to that series probably has to be one of my favorite episodes of all time that I've recorded. Just because, obviously, winning a Stanley Cup is great, right? But the way we did it in double overtime after all those shots on goal, it was absolutely insane watching that in person and talking over top of that. And then when Derek Heath scored, my voice was dying on me. You could probably tell in the video, but it was just an insane way to end one of my favorite series. Like, I think this might actually be my favorite series. It's hard to really say because obviously I did really like my Arizona series. Shout out to Arizona. I also really liked my Houston series last year that I did. There was a few series that I really liked, but some of the ones from way back in the past, like NHL 17, 18, 19, I kind of forget which, like those ones a bit after a few years. These more recent ones for sure have been some of my most fun ones. Though, like Arizona, we won so many cups. This one, we won 3 Stanley Cups in a Draft to Glory series. We didn't win any in Houston, but Houston had some really fun players in it. So it's like, this probably might be number one, but it's really tough to say because I get so attached to all the players I draft. So it's like, which team did I have the most fun with in terms of players? It's kind of a mixed bag because Arizona, I had Tyler Agostino, obviously is one of my favorite players, Matvei Michkov. This series, for example, I've had so many fun players. It's hard to name specifics other than Avery Parrott. Also probably like Derek Heath, guys like that have been on this team for their entire careers. Jorgensen. Yeah, there's just so many good players from every single series that it kind of makes me like maybe I like this series a little bit more, maybe I don't. It's, yeah, anyways, but we're here in the final episode, and we are basically going to go over every single player's career stats, and we're going to look at like regular season playoffs. We're also going to probably look at a few players from other teams that maybe had some really good careers that we've seen up there in like the point totals, just because I am curious on how the rest of the league kind of looked in a sense, because we didn't really look at those players' career numbers that much. We'll also take a look at the record book for every single team and our own, of course. And finally, we'll go over to my buddy Jeff's spreadsheet that he made for basically all my series combined. So we'll see where some of the guys in this series finished all time in terms of my channel's history. And then you guys can give me some suggestions down below as well on who you think should make the channel Hall of Fame out of this series. And I'll eventually, after probably my Chicago series ends, I'll probably make a list of people that can make it into the Hall of Fame from this series, from the Chicago series. And then also, I do have a second year of eligibility for my other series from last year. So I will probably be putting in from Houston, like Morgan Griffin, if you guys remember him, if you guys were following this channel at this point in time. So there might be some guys that get thrown in there for a second year of eligibility, but I might up the count of players that get into the Hall of Fame because last year I felt like we probably should have had somebody like Morgan Griffin get in, but we only had 4 guys get into the Hall of Fame. Those being Agostino, Michkov, Jääskeläinen, and then also Gene Thornton got in. So those are the 4 guys in the Hall of Fame right now, and they need to probably, will say, maybe another 5 or 6 players could get in from multiple series. So it'll be interesting to see how much players get in from each series. Like from Chicago, Asher Vance I think is definitely going to make it, but is anybody else from that series going to make it? That type of thing. But anyways, let's get into these players' career stats and see how good they did, because I have not actually looked at a lot of these players' career stats over the last like few seasons. So it'll be interesting to see who is the best out of the bunch and all that type of thing. And obviously we'll simulate up to the draft on this thing, and it'll say probably GMO complete. If it doesn't for some reason and we have another season still, I probably won't do that another season just because obviously we are running low on time for NHL 23. Like I might record it afterwards or something like that, but I don't think there's another season left. I'm pretty sure this is year 25. So let's take a look at some player stats here and look at one hell of a run. Actually, let's show you guys once again the playoff tree for our final Stanley Cup win. That was our 3rd of the series, which is crazy just because, like I said, I didn't win any in Houston. In Houston, I felt like I had some really good teams too, but they never won a Stanley Cup. They lost in the final, I think, 1 time, maybe 2 times. While this Anchorage team went to the Stanley Cup Finals a total of 5 times and won 3 times, which is pretty damn awesome. So you can see our final run, we went through Minnesota in 6 games. We went through the Oilers in 7 games. Went through the Predators in 6 games, who knocked us out last year in the conference finals. And then obviously won the Stanley Cup in the 6 games against Tampa as well. So that was a really good run. And we also knocked out a Tampa team that was doing really good going into the Cup final. You could see that they went to 7 games in round 1, but after that they won 8 straight games going into the final, but we managed to beat them. So that says a lot about our team's depth scoring, I think, and the team in general. So let's take a look at our player stats in their careers. So let's go start off with the centers. So we'll go with like Dimitri Leeson here, who has been here for a decent chunk of years. He was the first round pick of ours in 2039 at 17th overall, so a decent steal, I'd say, based on his point totals over the last few years. One of the better players on this team, arguably could have won, I'd say, the Conn Smythe this year. Also, according to Saturday Taco, he could have won the Conn Smythe, I'd say. He was a pending UFA, so there is a chance he might not have came back to this team at the end of the offseason. Obviously, I would have tried my best to keep him around if there was another season. But, yeah, he probably would have gotten a little bit pricey. But, yeah, Dimitri Leeson, let's go to his preseason stats first. You can see he was relatively solid. Not playoff-wise, regular season-wise, he only has played 5 years up to this point. He took a few years actually in the AHL, 3 years in the AHL, where he was doing relatively solid. Comes up to the NHL, only 32 points and a plus 14, which is not really that bad as a rookie. Then goes up to 40 points, plus 4, so his plus minus takes a little bit of a hit. But then year afterwards, these next 3 years, you can see he's starting to take off quite a bit. 50 points, 65 points, and 69 points this last season. So you could definitely see that goal scorer or more of an assist guy coming out in him. So really good from that. 256 points in 410 games, a plus 34. Also a good chunk of penalty minutes. Probably the power play helped him out quite a bit these last 2 years, I'd say, because he's had 28 power play points, but still, really good player. And then you can see the playoff-wise, he was actually really good this year in the playoffs and last year too, so he's starting to become a pretty good playoff performer. AHL-wise, he was good apparently in 2041 in the playoffs. But you can see in his NHL playoffs, he was kind of under point per game. And then eventually he just starts to take off over these last 3 years, where he at least puts up 8 points, 14 points. And in this year, he took off a lot, 24 points in 25 games. So yeah, Dimitri Leeson, pretty solid player, I'd say, for being a 17th overall pick. It has him listed as a top 9, which is kind of weird for potential, because I feel like this guy's more of a top 6 forward, but it's kind of hard to tell on that sense. And I just had to turn on my light because I think the lighting was a little bit weird, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so that was him. And then we got on to Avery Parrott, obviously the monster of this series. Avery's been here since what was the year he was drafted? 2025, so he's been here for the last 22 seasons. This guy's been a machine. I didn't expect him to play to 40 years old, but he dropped off a lot over his career. He used to be a 90 overall, I think at one point, maybe a 92 even. But yeah, he dropped off considerably, but his production did not, and that was the main thing. First overall pick, like I said, 2025. That was the year after we drafted Bickle, who used to play with us for a little bit, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, not a huge amount of X factors, but yeah, he was from Hungary, which not a lot of NHL players are from Hungary. I'm pretty sure there was only 1 or 2 NHLers in real life that are from there, which is kind of funny. But what a player Avery Parrott was, the captain since Jorgensen retired. And you can see he had an insanely good career. He had 45 goals in his last season, 46 goals the year before that, even though he was already dropped off a lot, which is insane. We'll go to preseason stats first before I read out his regular season numbers, even though you guys probably just saw it by now. But yeah, you can see preseason-wise, this guy was a machine as well. 183 points in 176 games. We go to the regular season, 901 goals. 901 goals. Almost became an 1,000-goal scorer by the end of the series. Obviously, we did have injuries kind of turned off in a sense, but he played 1,804 games, which is a lot of games, but he scored a goal every 2 games basically on average. And yeah, 1,632 points, a plus 279 on a drafted glory team as well, which is pretty damn impressive. I mean, we were really competitive after a certain point. So You can see he had some really, really good years, mostly 80, 70 points a season, mostly 30-plus goal years. Like, I don't think this guy scored any less than 30 goals except for 1 year, or 2 years, actually. Looks like 3 years, never mind. Like, if we looked at his, like, goal totals, his highest goal total was 62 goals 1 year back in 2035. And then he had another 50-goal season at one point, but he never hit 50 multiple times, which is kind of a surprise, but he was a consistent, like I could say, 45-plus goal scorer, you could see. And then, yeah, he had a few seasons down here that were below 30 goals, but most of those came really early into his career, so... But you can see, like, the plus-minus in his first few years, absolutely tragic, so that means since then, he had to been pretty much locked down. Because he only had a total of 6 seasons where he was minus. And obviously a lot of those were when we were a really trash team and still trying to find our identity. So, yeah, pretty damn crazy career for Avery Parrott. And that's just the beginning. The playoff numbers also are pretty damn impressive with Avery Parrott. 236 playoff points in 244 games, 143 goals, 93 assists. He is the best all-time goal scorer in playoff history, even better than Wayne Gretzky, I'm pretty sure. It's just insane what Parrott's done for his team. And he was a plus 75 in the playoffs. That's actually insane too, because that means he was in the right spot a lot. Shooting 15.6% as well in the postseason. And yeah, that last Stanley Cup run, even though he was 40 years old, he had 14 goals and 7 assists. So, like, he didn't slow down at all, really. Like, all these early Stanley Cup wins as well, he was fantastic. And, like, every time we went to the finals, he was up there in points. Obviously, it helps that we got really far in our playoff runs a lot of the time. But, I mean, he produced every single game. And even when I called upon him, he was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to score some goals for you. So that's what he did. What a player he was. What a player he was. And I'd say he's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer. For sure, I'd say you guys would definitely vote him in. If you don't vote him in, I don't know what you're thinking, but it is what it is. So there's Avery Parrott. Now we get into some interesting players that I say kind of fly under the radar a little bit with Ricardo Hartnell and Derek Heath. Ricardo Hartnell especially flies under the radar because of the fact, I mean, he was playing on the top 6, but we always look at Parrott, that type of thing. But Ricardo Hartnell was a really, really solid player as well. Over 1,000 points in his career. But he does not get the attention that most other players have gotten. But you can see really solid in the preseason. And then, yeah, regular season-wise, this guy was a very solid goal scorer. He scored 50 goals 2 times in his career. Never hit 60, but he was like a really good complementary piece for having Parrott in our lineup. We had another good goal scorer with him behind him. But, yeah, 1,230 points, so he was not point per game. But, yeah, he was damn pretty good. Like, I'd say, like, his first year, I was kind of concerned because only 27 points, not ideal. But then he started picking it up completely afterwards and becoming more of a 30-goal scorer. And you can see he really started the breakout when he had, like, that 84-point season out of nowhere. Then an 88-point season. That was a really insane season from him. Like, I didn't expect him to score 55 goals, but he picked up 55 goals. Then he had another 50-goal season a little bit after that. So he was in a really good stretch from, I'd say, 2041 onward. And, yeah, what a player he was. Like I said, he kind of just flew under the radar a little bit because he didn't have as good of playoff numbers. But, I mean, he's still really good in the playoffs. 196 points, 244 games. Mostly assisting on goals than scoring. So his scoring went down a little bit, but... Other than that, this guy won multiple Stanley Cups, and usually when we would go to the Cup finals, he was pretty damn good. So, another player that could potentially make it into the Channel Hall of Fame, but I don't think he's going to get the votes, but you never know. He was the 2nd overall pick in 2030, so we didn't even have to take him 1st overall. But yeah, he was drafted 5 years after Parrott, and I don't know if he would have came back to this team based on his asking price. He might have retired at the end of the year, who knows. And then Derek Heath, another guy that kind of, like I say, flies under the radar a little bit because of his points and all that. But let's actually look at this stats first. So he was the 3rd overall pick in 2027. So you have multiple guys that were drafted in the top 5. That definitely helped out a lot with our team. And the fact we were able to keep on to these guys as long as we did definitely helped out as well. But, yeah, Derek Heath was a phenomenal two-way forward. He never won a Selke, I think, or maybe he won one Selke, but he really did not win a lot of awards which is a pretty big surprise because he was a very solid defensive forward. You can see in terms of his preseason, he was almost point per game. Regular season wise, he was almost point per game as well. He had over 1,100 assists. He was a passer most of the time, but he almost hit 400 goals too, which is pretty impressive. 1,516 points, a plus 400 in his career. So yeah, this guy was no slouch on the two-way forward status. And obviously he scored that cup winning goal in the last episode, and that was just so clutch. He had actually a couple OT game-winning goals in the playoffs, because we also saw another one, I'm pretty sure, a few years back when we were wearing our alternate jerseys, if I remember right. So yeah, you can see though he was a plus 400, but his first 4 years of his career he was minus, but after that he was really good plus minus the entire way. So obviously it helps having a much better team, but even like when this team would probably not make the playoffs, he was doing really well. So obviously the production dropped off a lot over these last 5 years. You can see 88 points to 84 to 73, and then all of a sudden down to 49 and 57. But I mean, in the playoffs he still performed well. 218 points in 244 games, another 159 assists. He was pretty much the main guy that would be setting up paired, I'd say. A lot of penalty minutes for him as well. I didn't even realize that. 222 penalty minutes in the playoffs. How much did he have in the regular season? 1,413. So he was a very undisciplined player, but he was able to pick up a lot of points when he was still on the ice, which is really awesome. So shout out to Derek Heath, probably one of the better players in the series, but he also kind of flies under the radar a bit because of the fact we have a guy like Parrott. So those are the centers. Now we go over to the left wingers. We got guys like Ted Darby, who has been here his entire career, 73 points in 82 games in his last season. This guy was the last pick in the first rounder. Actually, that's the second last pick, I guess, because we're the 33rd team. He was drafted 32nd overall in 2031, so that was a massive steal. He wasn't, I would say, the best player in the world, but he definitely had his moments where he was really solid. Because you could see 926 points, so he didn't hit 1,000 points, but he was close to it. And then he also played 1,300 games. Not the best in terms of the defensive play, only a plus 55. But yeah, he had some really solid seasons. Never broke 40 goals, I guess. Yeah, he never broke 40 goals in a season. His highest goal scoring was 36, which I thought this guy was going to score a lot more because he's a sniper. But he was kind of more of a hybrid production player where he picked up a lot of assists as well. So there's that. And here's his preseason numbers, almost point per game in the preseason. And playoff-wise, he was not as solid as some of the other players we've just looked at, but he was still really good. Last 2 years, he was like pretty much point per game almost. And yeah, 167 points in the playoffs in 221 games. Really, really solid. Also, I apologize if this episode ends up running really late into like really, really long because it's a finale. But we obviously want to take an in-depth look at every single player on here. Do them some due diligence because some of these guys don't get talked about enough. Another guy, Sergei Bobkov. This guy was a pretty good steal, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this guy was a 6th round pick. So when you're doing a draft to glory, obviously it's good to hit with all your high up picks. But if you're able to get these late round steals, that helps and going a long, long way. Sergei Bobkov was a very, very good steal at that point, and we managed to lock him up multiple times. But yeah, you can see this guy was pretty much a pure passer, which is something we didn't really have when we brought him in, I think. So it's nice to have that great setup player. I think his career high in goals was 10 goals. No, that's not saying a lot. Yeah, it looks like his career high was 10 goals in the season. But he had 528 assists in 902 games and only 68 goals. So he wasn't close to a point per game player, but it took him a while to start developing. And then, yeah, he just started passing the puck all the time. Like one season, he had only 2 goals, but he had 62 points. So absolutely unreal from Bobkov. And yeah, preseason-wise, same type of boat. You can see he doesn't score a lot. He just picks up assists most of the time. And in the playoffs, he actually started scoring a lot more, I'd say. Especially this last year, he had 5 goals in the playoffs, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, he was more of a playoff performer in terms of scoring goals early on in the series at least. And then, yeah, he picked up a lot of assists as well. So you can still see the range between goals and assists is insane. But yeah, he was definitely a much-needed addition. Very good secondary option for scoring and offense. But yeah, it's still kind of crazy how much of a pure passer this guy is. Like, he has a good shot. Like, it's an okay shot, but he doesn't use it. He just passes the puck all the time. Like, how much shots did he take a season? He was taking under 100 shots mostly every single year. So this guy has a shoot pass bias of like 13, 14, 15. Maybe actually high 12 or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, like this one season he had over 100 shots. But that was the only season of his career where he shot over 100 shots, which is kind of funny. So there's that. Kind of wish he shot the puck a little bit more. And then we have Lee Gamble, kind of a youngster that's just coming into the lineup a little bit more as of these last few years, like I think last 3 seasons. This guy is a very intriguing player. A lot of penalty minutes you could see in his last season, 203, but he did pick up 53 points. So I think this guy was a very solid player for a short time. He was the last pick in the 2040 draft, so we got a good hit there in 2040. And obviously we'd have his RFA rights for another year, so we'd probably lock him up decently long term after this. But yeah, you can see this guy very, very aggressive. In his 410 games, he has 221 points respectively, but 712 penalty minutes. Most of them in these 2 seasons and then this season here in 2044. But yeah, this guy's only played 5 seasons, and yeah, he's a menace on the ice. Like when we were watching that game against Tampa, he was throwing some pretty big hits, if I'm not mistaken. Took him a couple years in the AHL as well to develop, but once he did, he was able to do well at the NHL level. Also had a lot of short-handed goals and points, so that's relatively impressive. Yeah, he was definitely a menace in terms of hitting. Not the most insane amount of hits, like not Brady Tkachuk style of like 200 plus hits, but I mean, when you're getting at least like 130 hits, that's pretty good. And his takeaway numbers were really good too, so he helped us out in terms of taking the puck away, which is really good too for that transition offense, so to speak. Preseason wise, you can see 22 points, 40 games, and his playoff numbers, 44 points, 80 games. He had a really good playoffs in this last year, 17 points, so he was a much needed addition in order to win that Stanley Cup, because having depth scoring is very key to winning Stanley Cups, I find. And yeah, solid playoff performances from him. Not so much in his first 2 seasons, but yeah, like I said, the last few years he started to come into his own quite a bit. Also had maybe a bit too much penalty minutes in the playoffs, because 41 penalty minutes there and 42 there. So it's kind of risky when you have a guy that's that like aggressive, because obviously you could get into penalty trouble and you could allow a lot more goals, but we managed to weather the storm when he was in the box, so that is good. Then we have Mika Vico, kind of another interesting player in this series that kind of flew under the radar. He was the 52nd overall pick back in 2034. And yeah, this guy, we basically drafted him and we gave him a long 8-year deal at $1.4 million, and he's still on that contract. He would be getting paid this offseason, but obviously there will not be another offseason. But yeah, we decided to give this guy a long-term deal just because he had really good shooting. I was like, you know what, maybe this guy's going to produce at a good level. And were we right? Yes, we were. He had 276 goals in 656 games, mostly scoring 30-plus goals a year. But he did drop off this year to 25 goals. Maybe didn't get as much power play time, but still, yeah, this guy was a really solid player. 427 points, plus 69. Nice. Only 138 penalty minutes, so not very aggressive, which is nice to have in your lineup. Preseason-wise, you can see 43 points in 64 games, 30 goals. So this guy, yeah, pure goal scorer. So pretty much the opposite of Bobkov. So it was good to have him next to Bobkov a couple times. And then, yeah, you can see playoff-wise, he stepped up a lot too. 86 points in 128 games. 51 were goals. So having him as kind of like a tertiary scoring option behind guys like Parrott and guys like Hartnell really helped give this team that depth scoring that we needed in order to win ourselves a Stanley Cup again. So yeah, there's Vico. Yeah, crazy player. One of the best Finns probably we drafted on this team, I'd say, because I don't know if there's a lot of Finns that we drafted, but there's that. Aiden Jancevski. This guy, I don't really know if I was completely sold on, but we did draft him in the 5th round, so him making the NHL was a good steal as well. 81 overall at 28. It hasn't had like necessarily the best career. Like, he's played 5 years up to this point. His rookie season was the best, and he's been dropping off kind of since then. But he has been also getting less and less ice time, so maybe that's why. But he's another kind of pure passer. You can see 39 goals, 169 assists for 208 points. And he took 357 shots, so it's not that bad shot-wise, but he's not shooting enough apparently. And then, yeah, preseason-wise, doesn't really do that much. But, yeah, you could definitely see he's a pure passer. Only one preseason goal. And playoff-wise, only 5 goals in the playoffs. Like, he didn't really do a lot in the playoffs over his career so far. So, yeah, that's probably why I didn't really pay much attention to him. But I don't think this guy was really the best player. But, I mean, for a 5th rounder to make it to the NHL, like I said, at least it was a steal that kind of gave us more depth. Because, obviously, we could have drafted somebody way worse and had, like, a 75 overall in our 4th line. But instead, we had an 81 because we hit here late in that round. So there is Aiden Jancevski. Where is he from, out of curiosity? Canada. I didn't actually take a look at where a lot of these guys are from. Gamble's American. Not a surprise. Probably from like Texas or something. Bobkov is from Russia. Darby is from the United States. We already know where Parrot's from. Leeson's Russian. Yeah, Leeson's Russian. Hartnell is from the United States, and Keith is from the United States. We have a lot of Americans on our team, which is kind of good because we're an American team, but obviously it's kind of fun to have players from a lot of different countries. We have next Toby Glencross. This guy kind of came into his own a little bit here, too, in his last season. 44 points, 82 games. He's 29 years old now. He was the last pick, or second last pick, I should say, in the first round of 2036. And, yeah, he was another pending free agent. Yeah, kind of a big guy to have in our lineup. He wasn't necessarily the most offensive player, you can see, but I mean, 30 to 50 points is kind of good. It's once again good to have more depth scoring. So yeah, 236 points, 574 games, a plus 25 preseason wise, 25 points in 56 games, and playoff wise, he was actually much better in the playoffs, I'd say, than anything. Like the last 2 years, 17 points in both of them. So 51 points in 102 games. I will definitely take that. I think he was also more of an aggressive player, right? Let's see those hits. 34 points in or 34 hits in how many games? 19 games. How about regular season wise? I think he usually is up there hit wise, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, like 100 plus hits these last 2 years. So he's starting to be a bit more physical and using that size that he has. 6'3", 223. Pretty big dude. So there is Toby Glencross. Then we get into Weston Larmour, who's another guy that kind of just started getting into the lineup a little bit here near the end. He was the 29th overall pick in 2042, so another good late round steal. You got to have those. Only 2 years in the NHL to this point, and he's been relatively solid to help with that depth scoring. Probably a guy that would get into the top 6 eventually if the series was to continue. But, I mean, 3 shorthanded goals in the second season is really nice. 5 shorthanded points. So he's definitely a good kind of defensive forward to have in our lineup. Considering he's not averaging that much at ice time, it's really good to have somebody like that. Like, look at those takeaway numbers. 26 giveaways to 86 takeaways. Like, this guy was really good on that front. Sucks that he wasn't a center because he could have been up there for potentially Selkies, but since he doesn't win faceoffs, obviously we aren't going to play him in that type of spot. So, yeah, and then playoff-wise, 17 points, 44 games. Really not that bad for a guy that's only 23. Definitely was on the upwards trajectory, I'd say. Then we have Theodore Schultz. He was only in his first season in the NHL, but this guy was a 4th rounder back in 2042, so another late steal. We've had a lot of those. And yeah, first season in the NHL, 28 points. Didn't really do much playoff-wise, so he was scratched, I think, when we had our celebration, but 3 points in 16 games. Solid in the AHL, though, the year before that when I guess they played 15 games. So, who knows how this guy would have turned out to be. But pretty solid. He is from Germany, so that's the first German, I think, on our team. Larmour, probably Canadian? American. Damn, okay. I thought he would be from, like, Quebec or something like that. And then did I look at Glencross? I think I did, right? Yeah, he's Canadian. Okay, so a couple Canadians as well on the team. Now we go to the defensive core, and we'll go to the goaltenders. And I think we'll also briefly check the AHL if there was any guys that we didn't use, where we used a couple years ago. But we'll get to the record book soon enough as well, because we're already like 30 minutes into this video. I don't want it to be super long for you guys, but at the same time, we got to do this series as much justice as possible, obviously. So I want you guys to know who could be a potential Hall of Famer. So Ryan Danner, very interesting player here. So Danner was a 2nd round pick in 2030, 40th overall. He definitely dropped down a little bit near the end of his career, but he was phenomenal in his last year in terms of stat line and playoff-wise. It's probably because he wants to get paid because he's a pending UFA. But, yeah, this guy was an interesting player for sure. We definitely chose the right player, I'd say, over what's his name? Morgan Denny. Morgan Denny won some Norrises, but Morgan Denny also, like, I think he would have been probably overpaid quite a bit. But yeah, we chose Ryan Danner multiple times and signed him for long term. His first season, not really much offense from an offensive defenseman, but you could see he started to pick it up quite a bit, going up to 58 points, being a consistent 50-point guy, 60 points at one point, 70 points at one point. And in his last season, he just went off 74 points, and I think he even led the team in points, which is pretty impressive. And yet, playoff-wise, he really broke out. He was really good in the first 3 rounds. The Stanley Cup Finals, he didn't pick up really much points. I think he only had 1 point in that Stanley Cup Finals, but we still won the Stanley Cup, and he still won the Conn Smythe, which is weird. So, what's kind of interesting, I didn't even notice, he only had 1 power play point in those playoffs, so everything else came 5-on-5, which is kind of a massive surprise. This guy also didn't really take a lot of penalty minutes, so that's also something that's really nice to have with an OFD, is they kind of are more not poking with their stick as much and not being as kind of like aggressive on the forechecks. So yeah, only 104 penalty minutes, almost through 1,000 games. So he was very disciplined, and that kind of helped us a little bit too, because you got to have some of those guys that don't take a lot of penalty minutes. But yeah, he was a very, very solid steal, and he was from Canada as well. So there's that. Then we head to Aldrich Klepis. This guy's only played the last few years, but he was the 26th overall pick, so another first round, late round steal. Kind of starting to come into his own a little bit offensively. You can see like the last few years picking up a decent chunk of assists and also goals in the NHL. But yeah, his plus minus in his first 4 years has been pretty solid. So good to have a kind of a lockdown defenseman. He is more aggressive. So that's what I mean about having a guy like Danner not taking a lot of penalty minutes, because if guys like Klepis take a lot of penalty minutes, that removes the guy off the PK. So obviously you want to have like those guys that don't take a lot of penalty minutes. That way that not all your defensemen are getting put in the box at the same time, so to speak. So yeah, he was kind of a good shutdown defenseman. No X factors, but he was a good steal regardless. 15 points in 73 playoffs games, not bad either. Only 3 goals last year in the playoffs, and 1 goal in his rookie season in the playoffs. Or not rookie season, second season. But this year he had no goals in our playoff run, which is kind of a surprise. So yeah, there is Aldrich Klepis from Czech Republic, as I was expecting with that name. Then we head to Grayson Smith-Pelly, and he's kind of an interesting player. He's only got exact top 6 potential now. He used to be kind of like a low elite at one point. Didn't really develop into that, but still a really good shutdown defenseman. You can see 574 games and a plus 129. Didn't really pick up much on the offensive front. Like his assists were okay, but the goal scoring not really much there. But yeah, just like I said, a good shutdown defenseman. That's probably why he has gold shutdown. Only 1 goal in 104 playoff games and 13 points. So he definitely didn't do much in terms of playoffs. But like I said, kind of a lockdown defenseman. And that's also kind of what you need. He's from Austria. That's interesting. I believe that's the only Austrian we've had since Morgan Denny, because I think Morgan Denny was also from Austria, if I'm not mistaken. Then we have Martins Howes, another guy that just barely got into the lineup these last few years. Actually, he's played 6 seasons now, but not really a huge offensive player. Again, more of a lockdown defenseman. Does score goals, but still more of a shutdown D-man. 16 points in 94 playoff games. And preseason only 7 points. He was the 33rd overall pick, so the dead last pick in 2038. So after we would have, I guess, won the Stanley Cup, which is kind of interesting. So there he is. He's from Denmark. So shout out to Denmark. And then we get into our final 2 defensemen. We have Ilya Butsayev, who I think was in his first season this year, right? Yeah, first NHL season this year. He was relatively good defensively. Plus 24, 10 points, 5 goals, 5 assists. Not too bad after 3 years in the AHL. And preseason-wise, only 1 assist, but that's okay. And playoff-wise, he was phenomenal defensively. Like, he was playing alongside Danner. Very good shutdown D-man. Plus 17 in 25 games. Really helped us out defensively. Also did take a decent chunk of penalty minutes, but it's not outrageous. So there is Butsayev, who was a 4th-round steal back in 2043 at 128. So another guy that we drafted outside of the first round that helped us out quite a bit, who is from Russia. And then we also have probably another Russian here, or he might be Ukrainian or something like that. We'll definitely take a look because I don't want to be throwing out that he's Russian right out of the gate. Victor Tulipov. He was another late steal. So you can see definitely why we started building up a good foundation on this team, because we drafted some really good low leads late in the draft, and that helped set us apart from other teams that weren't drafting maybe late. So yeah, 6th round, 198th overall. So that's late into the 6th round. That's almost in 7th round territory, if I'm not mistaken. And he's actually from, what's that country? Estonia, I think? Yeah, I think he's Estonian, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm getting this flag wrong, I apologize if you're from that country. I think it's Estonian. I'm pretty good usually with flags, so I think that's Estonia, but I hope I'm correct on that. So there's that. Yeah, he's more of a shutdown D-man as well. Only 55 points, but a plus 60. So he probably didn't pick up much in the playoffs. Yeah, only 6 points in 66 games. Minus 10 in the playoffs, so kind of lost his defensive status a bit in the playoffs, but that's okay. As long as we won those Stanley Cups, you know, it was all good. So there is Tulipov, and now we get into the goaltenders. Spencer Pusher. What a guy he was in the finals and playoff run in general. 2036 third rounder, drafted at 98th overall. Very, very solid steal here from the United States of America, because why not? You can see regular season wise, I really say I wasn't sold solely on his regular season play. Like a 902 save percentage is okay, but it's not really elite numbers. But 19 shutouts, and he's been playing with us since 2040, so quite a long time. And preseason wise, he was insanely good in the preseason. Actually, I didn't even know that. 32, 6, and 4 with a 913 and a 2.36. So preseason, really good numbers. Regular season falls off a little bit, and playoffs gets a little bit better than regular season, a bit, just because of this last run probably. But a 908 save percentage, a 45, 27, and 7 record. Obviously, the last year being a hugely great year for us with him in net. 3 shutouts in those 25 games. He also did have a briefly good stints in the playoff back in 2041. 2 games played in a 929. But he had a lot of bad playoffs as well, so obviously starting to come into his own a bit in the postseason. So there is Spencer Pusher. I don't usually hold on to goaltenders that long, so he's probably not going to make it into the Hall of Fame. We're probably not going to have much goalies ever get into the Hall of Fame just because I don't hold on to them long term, but still, Pusher, pretty solid goaltender. Then we get into Jorgen Hedin, who's only played the last few years. He was a 3rd round pick in 2039 at 83rd overall. And of course, he's from Sweden with a name like Yet. So there's that. Nah, I would say I wasn't sold on his performance in his first 3 years, to be honest. Regular season, or preseason wise, phenomenal numbers, 943. But obviously, it drops off considerably in the regular season. And yeah, his playoff numbers have been atrocious. So I don't know if this guy would have ever gotten a shot to be that guy in the playoffs. But yeah, he was not very good. He was good in his AHL career, looks like, kind of. But then in his 2 times in the NHL playoffs, he was not very good. I mean, he had a 3-3-3 record, but an 881 save percentage and a 4.2 goals against. So not very ideal. And then we head into Rory Fitzgerald briefly. This guy only played a little bit with us this season in the NHL because he was playing in the AHL the last few years. Not really sold on his performance. And yeah, I don't know if this guy would have got his name technically on the Stanley Cup. I know he did, but I don't know if he would. This guy probably would have been a backup at some stage, though. He was a 5th rounder in 2041, so another good steal for this team from the United States of America, of course. So there's our team's stats throughout their entire careers. Now we get to look quickly. Let's take a look at the AHL just to see if there's any guys that play with us. Like, we'll briefly skim over some of these guys, like Tommy Lucic, for example, who did play with us for a little bit. Only 1 season in NHL with 18 points. Not bad. But yeah, this guy was like a fringe 4th liner. He had a really good playoffs apparently in the last season for the Burnaby Aces, I guess. But there he was. He was a 5th round steal too. So another guy that really was a good addition with a late pick. Also Bear Addison, I forgot about him. 6th round pick, 197th overall. He did not play a single NHL game, but he was very much on the cusp of making it to the NHL. He actually played 5 playoff games, though. I forgot about that. We called him up, I guess, for the playoffs. So he played 5 playoff games and in no regular season games. So shout out to Bear Addison, though, for at least getting to play in some playoff scenarios. I don't think any of these other guys got to play at all, if I'm not mistaken. Some of these guys would have been close to making it to the NHL, like Sawyer Foote's a few years away, probably. Fernandez maybe a few years away. But unfortunately, we'll never get to see a lot of these guys and see how their careers would have unfolded. Cunningham, that's another guy that won some Stanley Cups with us. I forgot about that. Or I think he won Stanley Cups. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was just on our defensive core. But yeah, second rounder, another OFD. He only played 2 seasons with us, 38 points. And then playoff-wise, he played 2 seasons, 14 points in 37 games. Kind of got lost a bit in the depth department, but still a solid player, nonetheless. Did Nables ever play a game in the NHL? No, he did not. Damn, he didn't develop, really. He was a second rounder, elite. He's kind of a depth territory, but still. Didn't really develop into being that guy I was expecting. This Petterstrom guy was very close to making it to the NHL. Very close. His first AHL season, 46 points. But unfortunately, he never got a chance because of how late into the series we are. I think this guy could have produced at a pretty good level based on that passing number, but didn't get to have his chance. But he probably would have next season if there was another season. Artem Ifanaganov did not pan out, unfortunately, for a low elite. Reese Bomeister, this guy was also a low elite that has yet to pan out, but he's definitely close. We could say the brother of the former Bomeister. We used to have Jeffrey. And there is that. Okay, so there is our player stats. Now we got to get over to the... Actually, let's take a look at some of the players around the league, the top guys in scoring in the final season. Like, I think there's a couple I wanted to take a look at. Yeah, like William Raymond. This guy was a franchise player that was drafted by the Habs. I'm curious on his point totals. He was over a point per game in his career. Pretty solid. Don't know if he ever won a Stanley Cup, though. I don't think he ever won a Stanley Cup, which is kind of a big surprise. He might have won one, but I don't know. He was from Switzerland. Alexander Cote. I don't really know this guy that much. I think he's only played recently. Yeah, I don't really recognize him too much. Let's see. Oh, there's one guy I wanted to take a look at. This guy never won a Stanley Cup in this series. Joel Lukowicz. He also was a franchise player. And this guy was absolutely insane. He was on pace to be one of the best players of all time, probably. Because he's 27 years old, but he's almost at 1,000 points, and he's only played 738 games. Absolutely insane player, Joel Lukowicz is. We knocked him out in the playoffs one time, I think. Maybe 2 times. Only one time, I think. Yeah, only one time. And he went to the Stanley Cup Finals 1 year, but lost. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, this guy was an insanely good player. And kind of sucks that we didn't get to see how this guy's career finished. But, yeah, this guy was a pending free agent, so there's a chance that the Flames would have lost him. Probably just like they did with Jerome McGinley. They eventually had to move out from Jerome McGinley. So that would have been crazy to see where Lukowicz would have ended up. Anybody else that I want to take a look up here? I think Part Jacobson was up there in points quite a bit, right? Yeah, decent amount. Pretty solid player. 5th overall pick by the Kraken. Clarence Knighty, another solid guy that's won Selkies in this franchise mode. He definitely played a lot with Lukowicz. You could tell based on the points, just over point per game. And yeah, those playoff numbers are pretty similar to Lukowicz's. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to look at for those type of players. Charlie Guerin won some Selkies. Now with the Islanders. Interesting. I know he was with the Kings at one point. Kind of following the same route as a lot of historic players that went from LA to the Islanders, like Billy Harris, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think even Billy Smith was an LA King, right? So there's a lot of players that switched between those two teams. I could also shout out like Jeff Tambolini. Yeah, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that type of thing because Puck Doku's made me an insane machine. So there is all of that we wanted to take a look at. Let's take a look at the best defenseman if there's anybody I wanted to look at. Rui Dill, I think this guy has definitely been a pretty solid player in the series. Yeah, 605 points is not bad. Not bad at all. Definitely remember him. And then there's also Devin Lawrence, who we should definitely look at. We played him a couple times in the playoffs. He was with Dallas a couple times when we played them, and Nashville. 826 points. Yeah, this guy was really good. I don't know if he ever won a Stanley Cup. I think he did actually with Nashville last year, right? I think. Before that, he didn't really get a chance to win a Stanley Cup, though. So there is Devin Lawrence and Morgan Denny, our former defenseman, and Jeffrey Bomeister. We should probably look at the two of these guys, see what they did after they left us. Morgan Denny spent quite a few years in Florida, won a Norris at least once, maybe 2 times after leaving us. It's kind of crazy how much points he picks up because he doesn't put up a lot of points on the power play. But yeah, Morgan Denny, really solid player. I kind of wish I held on to him a little bit longer, but I didn't expect him to go on and win Norris trophies because he was a 5th round pick. Another guy that we drafted that was a late round steal. He was making almost, he was making more money than Danner was at the end. And yeah, he was Austrian like I thought. Jeffrey Bomeister was with Washington, and he started to come into his offensive game quite a bit after leaving us. I mean, or actually in his last few seasons with us and then leaving us, he was pretty solid too. 58 points in that last season. I didn't expect him to really have that much of an offensive punch because he's like only a top 4 if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he was really, really solid. 81 points in the playoffs as well as a defenseman is no slouch for sure. Late 1st round steal in 2033. So shout out to Jeffrey Bomeister, the Norwegian. And I think that's all I want to look at for player stats. Oh, actually, there's another defenseman I should probably look at since we haven't looked at him in a while. Esa Kolimainen. 36 years old. This might have been his last season of his career. So after leaving us, he had that long 8-year deal or whatever it was with the Boston Bruins. His production didn't really live up to standards. Like, he was picking up like 30 points, which is still good, but he wasn't getting into that 50-point range. Spent a few years with the Islanders. Really started to drop off quite a bit. And in this last season, he had 47 points with 15 goals with the Dallas Stars. And did he ever win a Stanley Cup? He did not, unless he won a Stanley Cup with us. No, he didn't, because I remember our defensive core was stacked and we didn't win Stanley Cups, and then it got worse and we won Cups. So I don't think he ever won a Stanley Cup, which is kind of a bummer in a sense, but I mean, yeah, Kolimainen was an okay player. 3rd overall, maybe a bit of a stretch, and maybe he was better at like a 5th overall selection, but still not a bad player. I mean, that asking price or that contract is not really that bad for the amount of points he picked up, so I was expecting him to get paid more. Okay, it's not anybody that used to play for us. Just wanted to take a look at that. Goaltending-wise, any goalies I want to take a look at? Might as well take a brief look at Teuton, who we just beat in the Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good goaltender, playoff-wise especially. Like, he was definitely why the Tampa Bay Lightning almost had a chance to beat us in that Stanley Cup Finals. He made so many saves in that overtime session. Pettinen, this guy won some Vezinas. Really solid goaltender this guy was. 308 wins. Yeah, definitely started to come into his own a little bit. And I think that's it for goaltenders, which means now we got to get into the record book. And this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I should probably put some timestamps in this video so that way you guys could actually kind of skim around a bit. But I would recommend at least just taking a look at as much stuff as possible. But let's take a look at the record book. We're going to take a look at every other team first, and then we're going to take a look at our stats, and we'll also take a look at the league record book as well. And then, yeah, we'll get into my record book thing that my buddy Jeff made me as well, where we'll be able to see all our players' stats as well. So, the Anaheim Ducks, this is what their records are looking like. Not going to read anything out unless I see anything that's been broken. So, Zegras, the best all-time Anaheim Duck, apparently. And John Gibson, the all-time in wins, which is probably already the same thing. So, yeah, just basically Zegras broke some awards, or records, I should say. Nobody breaking anything there except for Zegras had the most assists in Anaheim Ducks history in one season, and Colton Ellis had the most wins in Anaheim Ducks history in a season with 38. That's kind of an interesting stat because I thought Jay Shigeru would have had a lot more than 38 wins in a season, but not the case. Those were back in 2034. Rookie record-wise, Zegras had a record. Cameron Pelech had a record for goals. 45 goals in his rookie season last year. Oh, that was the franchise guy that went first overall, wasn't it? I think so. And he was also a rookie leader in points in a season, 72. Impressive. Game record-wise, Melvin Lowry, I do remember Melvin Lowry quite a bit because he was drafted by the Kraken around the same time I believe his parrot was drafted or somebody was drafted. I know it was somebody key on our team that was drafted around that point. So that's kind of interesting. And also Jake DeBrusk had the most goals in a Ducks history game with 4. That's interesting. Let's advance to Arizona because like I said, we'll go to us last. So Clayton Keller, best Coyote of all time apparently. Not in games played, but in points, assists, and not goals. Goals-wise, it's Casey Dawes now. So he beat out Shane Doan. Tristan Jarry, also the best Coyotes goaltender in terms of wins all time. It's kind of crazy. Season record-wise, we do not see anybody there, unfortunately. Rookie record-wise, nothing was broken in rookie records. And game record-wise, Nick Schmaltz's points in real life, I remember that because that was against the Ottawa Senators. So there's that. Boston Bruins, what do we got here? These are going to be tough ones to break, these original 6 teams, because obviously they are all very historic teams. Nobody there. Rookie record-wise, anything broken? Nope. And game record-wise, nothing broken. So the Boston Bruins had no records broken. Buffalo Sabres. Rasmus Dahlin had the most assists in game with 6 in 2028. Rookie record-wise, nothing was broken. Season record-wise, nothing was broken. And career-wise, Owen Power played the most seasons in Sabres history. He also played, the most games, obviously. And that's it. So, yeah, Buffalo, not a lot of records broken either. We head to the Calgary Flames. Clarence Knighty, most assists in Calgary Flames history. That's kind of cool. 810 of them. And nobody beat Joe McGinley's goal total, but I bet you Lukowich would have beaten it in the next few years if he was to resign there. But he might not have. Who knows? Season record-wise, Joel Lukowich, most goals in a season was 67. I don't remember the most that Joe McGinley ever had. It's probably like 50, at least, or close to it. Clarence Knighty, most assists in a season with 84, probably setting up Lukowich on most of those 67 goals or something like that. Rookie record-wise, no rookie records were broken. And game record-wise, nothing was broken. We head to Carolina. Berkeley Catan, most points in a game with 7. Damn, 2030. Impressive. Best rookie records in Carolina, nothing broken. Brandon Nicholas had the most shutouts in a season in Carolina Hurricanes history with 7. Anything else here? No. Career-wise, nothing really was broken. Martin Necas had 19 seasons, which is the most in Hurricanes history. Aho had the most goals in Hurricanes history. But obviously it's kind of tough to beat Ron Francis a bit. But I'm kind of surprised Aho didn't get over 1,100 points unless he switched teams in this franchise mode. Chicago, a lot of these ones probably not broken, my guess, because it's an original 6 team. Let's see here. Yeah, not seeing a lot of them. Yep, nothing broken in Chicago's history. Colorado's going to be tough as well with the amount of good players they've had over the years. But Avery Fawcett, most wins in a rookie season with 23 of them. Impressive. Season records, nothing broken in Avs history. Actually, except for Nathan MacKinnon, I guess, had the most goals in a season with 68 back in 2028. And career record-wise, Nathan MacKinnon, the most points in Avalanche history. That's pretty cool. So he beat out like Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, that type of thing. And he also had 1,540 games played and 730 goals. Wow. So there's the Avs. On to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Laine, the most points in Blue Jackets history, and it's under 1,000 points. Texier up there in seasons. Matejchuk up there in assists and games played. And everything else is pretty much the same. Laine, most goals, 504. Season record-wise, Lars Whitting. I don't think I recognize that name really at all, but 5 years ago, 53 goals was the best in a season. We head to rookie record-wise. Back in 2039, Whiting also had the most goals in a rookie season with 41. Eli Fraser had the most points in a rookie season with 57. And game record-wise, Johnny Gaudreau had 6 points in a game in 2025. Cole Sillinger had 5 goals in a game in 2034. We head to the Dallas Stars. Nothing there. Olli Jokinen, almost Olli Jokinen. That's kind of funny. 35 wins in his rookie season in 2036. That is a record. Season record-wise, let's see what we got here. Frederick Bickle, our former player, a former guy we drafted like 3rd overall or 2nd overall, something like that, the year before we got Barrett. 57 goals in a season is an all-time record for the Dallas Stars, beating guys like Mike Modano. So that's pretty cool. Jordan Gavin, the most assists in a season by a Dallas Star, and that's in the same year with 83 points, or 83 assists. So he was probably on the same line as Bickle back in those days. And career-wise, nothing was broken. Mike Modano still leading in every single department pretty much. We head to Detroit, probably nothing broken, because this team has way too much good players in their history. Let's see, nothing broken, and yeah, nothing broken. Those original 6 teams, like I said, are going to be very tough to beat. And this Edmonton Oilers team is definitely going to be tough to beat as well, with Gretzky and Messier and all that. Vic Auld, though, did have the most assists in a rookie season with 51 back in 2025. Victor Fedoruk had the most shutouts in a rookie season with 4 in 2041. Season record-wise, nobody beaten anything, not a surprise. And career record-wise, Leon Draisaitl, the best Oiler of all time in points, because I guess Gretzky had points mostly with the other teams as well, like LA and the Rangers and St. Louis. Shout out to St. Louis. But yeah, 1,700 points. Oh yeah, I forgot about that because he played a shit ton of games, didn't he? 1,700 points, 22 seasons, 1,706 games. God damn. Jeremy Swayman, the most shutouts in all-time history of the Oilers, with 33. Victor Fedoruk was getting close. And then Leon Draisaitl, the most goals as well. So Leon Draisaitl cleaning up on some Oilers stats, which is pretty cool. We head over to the Florida Panthers. Barkov with a lot of them. Spencer Knight with some as well. Obviously, nobody's going to beat Paul Laus in penalty minutes. Kind of hard to do that nowadays. Spencer Knight up there in shutouts all time in a season. And Jonathan Reisner up there in wins in a season with 46. Damn. That's a lot of wins. Rookie record-wise, Devin Rome, 30 goals is a rookie record. And also point-wise, he has that rookie record too. So shout out to him. Game record-wise, nothing broken. We head to Los Angeles. Nothing there. Actually, I want to go back to this. There you go. Yeah, I apologize if this episode ends up being really super long. Like, I'm already almost an hour of recording, so I think this is going to be a very long episode, but I hope I do you guys some justice with the series a bit. There's that. Anze Kopitar, pretty much in mostly everything. Not a surprise, though. We head to Minnesota. Kaprizov, Jonas Brodin. Gilbert Menard. That has to be a generated guy, right? Yeah, that has to be. Most penalty minutes in Minnesota history. I mean, Derek Bugard would have gotten that if he was with Minnesota longer, but unfortunately he wasn't. Rest in peace to him. But Nelson Bathgate, best goal scorer in Minnesota history, so he beats out Marian Gaborik because Gaborik wasn't there long enough. Also had too much injury problems, I guess. Yeah, Nelson Bathgate had a 53-goal season one year. Leo Binock had 75 assists one year. It's crazy. 75 apples, huh? Most assists in a rookie season, Jamison Kane, Silas Reinprecht, Nelson Bathgate. A lot of young guys beating some records here in Minnesota. Not surprised, though, since they're kind of a younger team. And Artem Kulikov. Most assists in the game with 6. Montreal, I don't think anything's going to be broken here. If something's broken, actually, William Raymond had the most goals in a rookie season, which is kind of cool, but that's probably going to be all it is, right? Yeah, they're just too much of a historic franchise to beat those type of things. Actually, never mind. Never mind. Juraj Slafkovsky, the best point getter all time in Montreal Canadiens history. That's kind of something I didn't have on my bingo card. He had the most assists as well and games played. So I don't know who was the prior leader, but still that's a huge one there for Slafkovsky. I don't think he's going to be that type of player in real life, though, to be honest. Nashville has Michael Misa, Eli Tolvanen up there, because when I started this franchise mode, Tolvanen was not a Kraken yet, so he was with the Preds pretty much till the end, I think. Rory Mangone, do remember him from Vegas and stuff, I think, as well. 845 penalty minutes, god damn. But 445 goals. Craziness. Yeah, Mangone was a machine. 71 goals one year, back in 2036. Also 106 points that year. Yeah, some of these Nashville teams are pretty damn good in this series. So there is all that. I'm probably going to try not to read all this out because I know this episode's already going to be crazy long and I'm going to have to upload it and you guys are probably going to have to sit and watch through it. But yeah, I'm going to just skim through this a little bit more the rest of the league just so you guys can still see every single team stat and whatnot. Just because it's kind of neat to kind of like piece together the final stretches of this story in a sense, if you want to call it like a story. So, but obviously we'll take a look at our stats more in depth wise. I'm pretty sure most of these original 6 teams won't have much records broken, but there might be some. Damn, John Ross Roach, I thought that was a generated guy at first, because I don't think I've ever heard of that last name before. Huh, back in 1927. It's crazy. Ottawa, of course. Wow, Drake Batherson up there in games played, huh? Ottawa's always fun to look at for me just because, obviously, they are my #1 team. It kind of sucks, though, that in a way that I can't use the Anchorage Ice Tigers logo on any merch because I honestly was thinking of maybe making some merch with that logo, but there's no way I could do it. So I'll probably have to end up just putting like text on a shirt or something if I actually want to make merch for this series, but it'd be interesting to kind of do something like that down the road. Just because I know a lot of you guys really like this series. This is probably my most successful series just because the first episode has over 10,000 views, which is kind of nuts. So, considering it took less than a year. But yeah, we'll just continue skimming through this and then we'll get to our career stats and all that stuff. And we'll take a look at the entire league records as well. And then after that, we will look briefly at the record book my buddy Jeff made me, but I'll also probably link it in the description so you guys can go take a look at it yourselves and make some judgment on who you think should make it to the Channel Hall of Fame, because I am curious on what you guys think. Obviously, I have my eyes set on some specific players, but you guys might think differently. And obviously, at the end of NHL 23, we'll probably do our introductories on who gets in and who missed out on it this year. But likely, like I said, I'll probably end up adding some Houston players to it as well from last year. Maybe some Arizona players as well. So that way those guys have a second year of opportunity. But I don't know if they'll get in because a lot of you guys are new to this channel too. So you might not know them. Vegas. Almost near the end of this finally. Oh, Malachi Gallant. Goddamn. Yeah, that guy was a guy that scored a lot. And I remember him getting drafted too. It's crazy that we've gone through this many seasons already at this point. So there's that. And finally, the Winnipeg Jets before we look at our own records. Danny Heatley. Seeing Danny Heatley's name there is funny. Melvin Lowry up there, no stats as well. Yeah, Lowry was a machine in the series. Okay, so now we can finally go to our stats. And obviously, this is going to be where it's going to be really interesting. So let's start off with the career numbers. So Avery Parrott, obviously the best point getter all time in most seasons in Anchorage history. Derek Heath was the most assists, not really a surprise though, because we saw he had over 1,100 assists. Games played as Parrott. Penalty minutes, Derek Heath, not a surprise, because we did see he had over 1,400 penalty minutes. Spencer Pusher had the most shutouts in this team's history with 19, and also the most wins in his team's history. But we got to give shout-outs to guys like Aiden Tays, though, for his playoff performances. Because Aiden Tays wasn't a regular season guy, really. But playoff-wise, that guy won us some Stanley Cups in the clutch. So, shout-out to him. But Avery Parrott, obviously the best goal scorer in team history. Now we head over to the season records for our team. Tim Bender, most games played, because it's always the first year for some weird reason. As you always play 82 games. Koskinen had the most shutouts in a season. That's kind of a surprise because he wasn't really here that long term. He had 8 shutouts in a year back in 2037, so a decade ago. But he does have a record in our books, which is kind of cool. Lee Gamble, most penalty minutes in a season with 203, and in this season, obviously, I think he beat that, so I think that should get changed. Parrott, most goals in team history in a season with 62, and most points with 106. Derek Heath up there with assists in a season with 80, which was the same season that Parrott had all those goals, so not a surprise. And most wins in the season, Spencer Pusher as well with 42. So Pusher might have been the best goalie we had in the season, this series, for the most part. Rookie record-wise, Aiden Jancevski, the most rookie assists in a season. So that's why I said that guy I wasn't like really sold on. But I mean, his rookie season was good, and then he kind of fell off afterwards. Spencer Pusher, most shutouts in a rookie season with 5. Frederick Bickle, most goals in a rookie season. So even Parrott didn't have the best rookie season, apparently. 39 goals from Bickle is a record. That's kind of a big surprise because that record was set 23 seasons ago. So that's kind of crazy. And then most wins in a season was Pusher back in 2041 with 42. And Bickle also had the most points in a rookie season with 73. So shout out to Frederick Bickle for still finding a way to be in our record book. And in game record wise, this is going to be where it's very interesting to see. So Dominic Klesla made the most saves in a game with 58 back in our first year. Shout out to Dominic Klesla. I think he was one of our first ever selections in the series, like a third rounder. But yeah, he has a record still, because apparently we never made more than 58 saves in a game. And Derek Heath, the most assists in a game was 6 assists back in 2037. Most points in a game was a defenseman, oddly enough, in Boris Zikov. That's a kind of a surprise with 6. I'm kind of surprised that Parrott and stuff like that never beat 6 points. And then Frederick Bickle, most goals in a game as well with 4. So somehow, even though Parrott was scoring a lot, he never had 4-goal games. I am kind of surprised on that. Let's take a look at the league records now. So we'll go to career first. So let's see. So Draisaitl, Dawes, Bedard, Ovechkin, and Slavkovsky in games played. Jake Onger. This part's broken. I forgot about that. We don't really care about goalies games played because this isn't even realistic. Onger definitely did not play 1,700 games. If he did, that would be insane. Most goals in NHL history is Alex Ovechkin. Wait, why is it saying 1,016 though for Parrott? Didn't we just see what said 901? I think this might be broken as well, because there's no way Parrott has over 1,000 goals, unless it's including playoffs. It might be randomly including the playoff numbers. I don't know. But Ovechkin number 1, Stamkos number 2, Melvin Lowry and Ulf Magnusson number 3 and 4, and then Parrott at 5. Interesting. Point-wise, Gretzky still number 1, Draisaitl number 2. That's crazy. Ovechkin, McDavid, and Kane. So kind of crazy to have 3 Oilers up there. And then Ovechkin played as long as he did. Anything else interesting to note? Michael Misa up there in assist at 4th. Connor McDavid at 2. Win-wise, Vasilevsky was up there with 517. But he didn't beat Brodeur. Fleury up there in shutouts. I think that's already the case in real life, but I could be wrong. Most 50-goal seasons, Ovechkin number 1 with 11. Bossy still number 2. Gretzky still number 3. Ulf Magnusson at number 4. And Joel Lukowich, even though he's 27, was up there at number 5. So Joel Lukowich could have very well been the best 50-goal scorer in NHL history. And then, yeah, most 100-point seasons, McDavid at 3. That's pretty much it. Then we head to season records. Let's see what we got here. Anything beaten? Usually these are the ones that are kind of tough to beat, but I'm curious if there was any. Let's see. Not seeing a lot so far. Yeah, nothing broken there. Rookie records. Anything broken here? Joel Lukowich had one of the best rookie seasons in terms of scoring. 50 goals in his rookie season. Anything else? Spencer Pusher. Wow, okay, that's a rookie record. I didn't realize that. I didn't think that was a rookie season for Pusher. He had 42 wins in his rookie season, and that was almost an NHL record. He was just below Belfour and Sawchuk. So shout out to Spencer Pusher. That's cool to see. And obviously the shutouts are not going to come close. So there is the league records, interestingly enough. So there you go. Now comes another fun thing. Let me actually quickly Let's go advance our sim to playoffs, our sim to the draft, and see it say that this mode is complete, just because we got to get that satisfaction at least. And we also got to take a look at the award winners for this last season. And there we go. We get the notice franchise mode is now complete. So we did hit the end. Let's take a look at those awards for this final season, because we have yet to do that. Then we'll take a look at my thing that my buddy Jeff set up, because obviously I want to take a look at that since he's put a lot of work into it. But there you go. We won the Stanley Cup in the final season. And yeah, there's that. Let's take a look at those winners in the last season. So Art Ross Trophy again goes to William Raymond for the second straight season, and same with the Hart. This guy won the Norris, beating out Lawrence for the first time apparently. Parks, who we beat in the final, won the Lady Byng. Cool. Pellick was the Calder winner this year. Ryan Danner won the Conn Smythe. Of course he did. Yes. I wasn't sure if he was going to, because even though it showed him in game winning it, sometimes it changes. But yeah, Ryan Danner, machine there. Petnin, the Vezina, and the Jennings, and we knocked him out in the conference finals. Smith, the Masterton. Stamkos won the Jack Adams in the last season. That is funny. Imagine seeing Steven Stamkos with a bunch of like gray hair. It's crazy. Clarence 91, another Selke to wrap up this series. Raymond won the Lindsay, and Lukovic won the Richard for the third straight season. Wow, Casey Dawes, yeah, he was still playing at the end. Really good in the AHL in his last season. There we go. So those are the final awards. And now we got to take a look at the stuff that my buddy Jeff set up. So let's head on over to my browser. Sorry if I'm actually showing my desktop. I should probably change that over here quickly. Display capture. Let's send this over to this monitor instead. Perfect. So let's take a look here at not the comments from the last episode. I meant to actually read out those, but I probably won't get time to reading those out in this episode because none of them are suggesting anything anyways. But I really appreciate what you guys were saying about this being one of your favorite series. So this is what my buddy Jeff set up. So he has this right now. He's working on like getting all my stats in, but basically he has top players, and then there's my team record book. So if you click on top players, you have the top 8 forwards of the series. So you have like these nice little graphics that he makes set up. So there's Avery Parrott getting the Stanley Cup, which is pretty damn dope. Let me make sure I'm actually showing the right screen. Yeah, I am. Okay, good. So there's him showing getting the Stanley Cup win. And you can see his point totals, all that type of thing. So very cool little stat thing that he makes. Also, you can see Derek Heath there. Like these are almost like little hockey card type things in a sense. So there's Derek Heath after scoring the Stanley Cup winning goal. And you have Mats Jorgensen, our former captain, who like we didn't even go over his stats, but he was terrible defensively because he was with us in the beginning. But what a player Mats Jorgensen was. He could be a Channel Hall of Famer for sure. I'd say he's definitely up there as one of those guys that could get in. Didn't really win any awards, but still won a Stanley Cup or two. Actually, 2 Stanley Cups, yeah. And then you have like Ricardo Hartnell, who I had no photo for, unfortunately, but still, good stat line from him. We have Miles Claxton, another guy we have to give a shout out to. Good second round steal here. 940 points, almost got to 1,000 points. You also have Ted Darby with his numbers. So there is that. Valery Zikov, another guy that we don't really give enough props to. There was some really fun players in this series, and it's going to be definitely tough for people to say who should get into this record book, or not record book, should get into the Hall of Fame. And then top 5 defensemen, we got Ryan Danner. We got Jeffrey Bomeister. We got Boris Zikov. This is just based on points, I think, mostly. Oli Harakala. And Morgan Denny. So some of these guys just left the team afterwards, which is interesting. Spencer Pusher. Sean Cox is up there, which honestly is kind of weird because Sean Cox, to me, was a okay regular season guy, but playoff-wise, this guy did not do enough. And then Harry Neal, got to shout out to him as well. Kind of an underrated goaltender. So there is that part. And now we got to get into the actual record book itself, which this part is pretty cool. Actually, he has it on here. Does he have the link set up? No, he does not. Let me actually just go to the actual spreadsheet itself. But he does have a record book set up nicely, which kind of ties in all my series together in a sense. So you could see that if we go to forward season rank, like I think I showed you guys this last year, you can see now forward season wise, Parrott and Claxton, Keith, the most games played in any of my series. They beat out Jaskalainen and Agostino. And then Avery Parrott, the best goal scorer that's ever been in a series of mine, which is pretty damn impressive. 901 goals, beats Gene Thornton by a long shot. Obviously, Asher Vance, as of his updating, is still not up there yet, but Vance is definitely going to be close to getting past Parrott, I'd say. You have Derek Keith up there in assists. Number 2 in assists. He just finishes behind Tyler Agostino, which is kind of crazy. So that's pretty impressive. And then you look at all-time point-wise. Parrott and Keith are number 2 and number 3. Jorgensen's number 5. Ricardo Hartnell gets to number 7, which is pretty impressive considering, like I said, this guy flies under the radar a little bit. And yeah, that's pretty damn impressive on those things. Ricardo Hartnell also and Derek Keith were both up there in plus-minus. They didn't get past Agostino, but still impressive on that front. We had to defensemen. In terms of the best defenseman from this series, it was probably Danner. Yeah, Danner finishes 6th best in terms of defenseman for us ever, behind guys like Morgan Griffin, Tarek Tukin, that type of thing. We head to goaltenders. Where did Pusher finish? Probably nowhere close because I don't hold on the goalies long enough. Let's see, wins. Oh, Pusher was number 7. That's not bad. Finished behind Daryl Goalie for my Sharpshooter series. If any of you guys recognize any of these names from like my Canucks series and my Wild series, then you guys are true OGs, so shout out to you. But yeah, nobody's going to be up there in save percentage and stuff like that because they changed that around where goalies aren't really as good as they used to be. Yeah, and then there's playoff numbers as well. You can see Parrott, Keith, best playoff performance players of all time. They beat out Agostino. Hartnell was also up there. Ted Darby was up there. So this Ice Tigers team was pretty stacked in terms of playoff performances. Even on probably the defensive front, yeah, Danner was the best defenseman in playoff history for me, beating out Tarek Tukin. So there's a lot of guys that could really get into winning some chances at the Hall of Fame. And then like single season records, I don't think, yeah, none of these were like really beaten that much. Parrott was up there in goals one season, but yeah, Vance has had too many good goal scoring seasons, so. But yeah, if you guys want to take a look at this a little bit more in depth, I will link it in the description because Jeff has put a lot of work into these type of things for me, and I really appreciate him doing that. You could also see like on this page, it has like kind of like a generalized thing, so you can kind of see, like if you scroll down a bit, if I'm not mistaken, you can see who has the most awards of specific types. So you can see, oh, Morgan Griffin from my Houston series last year had the most. Art Ross is as a defenseman, which I guess obviously that doesn't happen that often. But you can come here and see that I guess not a lot of my records were actually broken in terms of awards. Yeah, unless he hasn't updated that, but I think he has. Yeah, he definitely has to have had that done already. But you can see all these playoff records. Most of them are Ice Tigers related. So this series has definitely been one of the best for us team, or for my series in on YouTube for sure. In terms of like breaking awards and all that. And then you also have like coaching stats, which it says basically our all-time record. So our all-time record in this series, let's see, was 963, 936, and 151. So we won 47% of our games, but probably in terms of playoffs, I don't know if he has a playoff thing. I think he does. In terms of like cups and Presidents trophies, we have 3 cups. That was the tied for the second most with the Avs from NHL 19. Which was the throwback series. Carolina from my NHL 18 series, and Arizona had the most, obviously, last year with 6. So this Ice Tiger series was pretty successful. And in terms of Presidents trophies, we only won 2 of them with the Ice Tigers, which is kind of a surprise, but at the same time, maybe that's why we won more Stanley Cups. And win percentage-wise, you could see that Anchorage was, where were they? Was it not put on this list yet? I guess this wasn't put on this list part yet. Unless I'm just oh no, it says just Ice Tigers. There you go. Yeah, we weren't actually that good in terms of win percentage, really, but we won in the playoffs and when it mattered most. We won more percentage of our games, though, with this Ice Tigers series than we did with Houston, so technically this was the better draft of glory in that sense. But the best team, obviously, of all time is the Arizona Coyotes, and I don't know how long it's going to be before I actually am able to beat that type of thing, but there is that, and I think that's going to do it, guys, for this Ice Tigers series. It's been a hell of a ride doing this series. I mean, 91 episodes, I think, at this point. Absolutely insane. A lot of fun players. Sucks that I can't go into Edit Player anymore so I could say look at their faces again. But Yeah, let me know like all your favorite players in the series, maybe your favorite moments from the series. Also, like I said, give me some Hall of Fame player suggestions. So who you want to see get into the channel Hall of Fame. And obviously, we'll do a channel Hall of Fame vote at the end of NHL 23. And yeah, basically, we'll be starting up our Tampa Bay 2009 Throwback Series on Thursday. And that's going to be a short-term series until NHL 23 is done, basically. So it might be one that we don't win a Stanley Cup in, but it should be just a fun series for some nostalgia purposes. So hopefully you guys are into that. And obviously, the Chicago series will still run a little bit longer as well. But let me know anything down below, and I'll see you guys next time.